Hello, my name is Zephyr and I'm zooming in from New York. My mentor is Hannah Dunn, and today I'll be discussing the limitations of neuroimaging and systemic gender disparities and biases in autism research and diagnosis. This topic is important to me because 2 years ago I learned I was autistic, and last year I decided to try to get officially diagnosed for accommodations at school. When I got to the clinic, though, I was disillusioned by my diagnostician's reliance on outdated information, as well as the fact that he refused to diagnose me because I was too high functioning. He instead diagnosed me with depression and anxiety. I learned that my experience was not unique, and that prompted me to learn more about the many factors that influence the underdiagnosis of women, transgenders, and people of color. Autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is a neurodevelopmental variant that affects how people interact and communicate with others, learn, and behave. It encompasses a wide range of behavioral, cognitive, and social characteristics, making its definition and diagnosis process highly complex. Neuroimaging technology used in autism research and the diagnostic practices for ASD have historically been filled with both systemic racism and sexism. This is still the case, and certain populations are disproportionately underdiagnosed, which has significant implications for the mental health of those groups. Awareness of gender biases in neuroimaging and diagnostic practices is essential and can save lives. It is necessary that autism research is approached intersectionally in a way that considers social, gender, cultural, and environmental factors. In this presentation, I'll begin by critically examining the limitations of neuroimaging technology in capturing the complexity and diversity of autism in scientific research. Next, I'll discuss some of the gender biases present in gender neuropsychological research as a whole before addressing bias and misinformation specific to autism research. To conclude, I'll provide a brief sociological explanation for the fact that certain populations are disproportionately underrepresented in autism diagnosis rates. Before I begin, though, I'll share a little about the neurological endophenotypes underpinning autism. As a result of their heightened synaptic connectivity, autistic individuals may register more sensory and cognitive information than their allistic counterparts, meaning their counterparts who do not have autism. The brains of most autistic individuals seem to have a bias towards information processing at the local level, which helps explain why autistic individuals tend to perform worse than allistics on tasks requiring the integration of perceptual information across time. Their subjective experiences and the impact of their sensory, motor, and cognitive input may also seem to be a lot more chaotic and intense. It has also been hypothesized that the variations of cortical connectivity underlying sensory and perception styles characteristic of autism may also underpin restrictive and repetitive behaviors, such as stimming, stereotypy, and special interests. These somatosensory variations could even cascade into behavioral and social differences, that is, perceptual deficits leading to social withdrawal and challenges with the integration of social rules constructed by neurotypicals. Neuroimaging technology has greatly advanced our understanding of structural and functional differences between the brains of autistics and allistics, but they do not capture information processing at the level in which it actually occurs, the neural circuit level, at least not in a way we can understand. As a result, current critical neurodevelopmental research and subsequently diagnostic models cannot fully capture the nuance in how autism cognitively and behaviorally manifests, and how that changes depending on race, culture, class, gender identity, sex, upbringing, diagnosis status, coexisting disabilities and conditions, and many other intersecting identities. More research, especially qualitative research like case studies and ethnographic studies, is needed to better represent the diversity in neuroanatomical, cognitive, and behavioral presentation. This will help combat the homogenization and erasure perpetuated by current autism research and Aspie supremacist narratives, definition at the bottom of my screen. Both of these are built around notions of white masculinity. To avoid undue gender binarization, neuroimaging must be approached from a non-cisnormative, non-male-centric stance. Additionally, researchers must consider the social and cultural implications of neurological research, as research has the power to both reinforce and combat damaging narratives. Moving on from neuroimaging, I'm going to talk about some of the biases in gender neuropsychology. Gendered behaviors and cognitive tendencies are rarely hardwired. The influence of sex and sex hormones on brain development is often overestimated. Growing evidence suggests that behavioral and cognitive differences are shaped predominantly by societal expectations such as gender norms, with a much more minimal impact from biological predisposition. Brain organization theory suggests that brain structure and function is influenced by testosterone levels in utero, and biological determinism is the idea that biology, especially genetics and endocrinology, determine human behavior and social outcomes. Concepts such as these are rightly losing credibility because there are multiple social contexts, such as race, ethnic background, socioeconomic status, cultural context, and occupation, that influence brain structure and function, and give rise to diverse patterns of behavior and mental processes. These factors form a complex array that intersects with itself to shape an individual's unique experience of gender and sexuality. Gender psychology is plagued by methodological errors, such as selective focus on traits that are particularly sexually dimorphic. How those around a person expect them to behave actually shape not only a person's behavior, but their perceptions of it as well. Self-report data is often unheeded when inconsistent with itself, but behavioral patterns are inherently inconsistent, and these inconsistencies must be treated as important information to understand socially and sociologically what is causing them to arise. Moving on to autism-specific biases, the ratio of diagnosis rates between autistic cis men and autistic cis women has been cited as anywhere between 2 to 1 and 16 to 1. Most studies cite it as 4 to 1. Several theories have been proposed to explain the higher prevalence of autism in males, such as the female protective effect and the extreme male brain theory, which involve the ways sex-related processes interact with autism risk genes. The extreme male brain theory suggests that autism is caused by the hypermasculinization of already sexually dimorphic traits, attributed to the effects of prenatal testosterone on brain development. The theory states that prenatal testosterone leads to exaggerated male behaviors. The higher the fetal testosterone levels are, the higher the tendency to systemize rather than empathize is, and things like eye contact, rate of speech development, quality of social relationships, and theory of mind are also lower. This theory places a huge overemphasis on biology and largely overlooks the impacts of socialization. The theory wrongly assumes that there is such a thing as a female brain or a male brain in the first place, and that gender lies on a binary female to male continuum. Daphne Joel's mosaic hypothesis challenges these concepts and posits that most sex differences are multimorphic, not dimorphic. The female-male continuum may be useful for describing the distributions on a single brain feature for women and men, but it fails when several brain regions or the brain as a whole are considered together. Sex-related differences in the direction of changes in the brain following specific environmental events may be attributed to sex-related differences in neuropsychiatric disorders and the likelihood of their development. The female protective effect assumes that etiology is correlated with autistic behavioral traits, and it suggests that girls and women are biologically shielded from autism because they are more resistant to autism risk factors. This conception is merely an extension of the extreme male brain theory. In reality, girls and non-binary people, as well as transgender people in general, often need to exhibit more externalizing behaviors or intellectual disabilities to even be considered for a diagnosis. Putting aside gender for a moment, why are certain populations of autistics diagnosed less often in general? Two sets of factors may prevent autistic people from getting diagnosed. One prevents them from ever reaching the door of the diagnostic clinic, such as diagnosis stigma and caretaker awareness. The other prevents definitive diagnosis from actually being made, such as social camouflaging behaviors and professional lack in knowledge and training. Many autistic people, especially those with low support needs, camouflage their autistic differences and difficulties. For example, they might suppress self-stimulatory behaviors, mimic the behavior of those around them, copy nonverbal behaviors, and rehearse complex social scripts before an interaction. These strategies may help them gain access to employment, develop and maintain friendships, and avoid bullying and discrimination. Autistic women and transgenders are most likely to camouflage. There's a lack of attention directed towards assessing camouflaging behaviors, which is only made worse by the fact that many diagnosticians rely on outdated or sexist and racist information. There is still much research to be done about autistic transgenders, women, and gender nonconforming people, and about 80% of them remain undiagnosed at age 18. Current shortcomings of autism research, especially regarding women and transgenders of color, contribute to the exacerbation of comorbidities and mental trauma. Emerging research points to the possibility that transgender and genderqueer people are most likely to remain formally underdiagnosed. This significant diagnostic gap profoundly impacts the mental health of non-cis men. Childhood, adolescence, and early adulthood can be very difficult for women and transgenders with undiagnosed autism, or an alphabet soup of incorrect diagnoses like the ones I received. The diagnosis gap may result in the exacerbation of a number of co-occurring conditions, especially anxiety, social anxiety, depression, disordered eating, borderline personality disorder, OCD, PTSD, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, co-occurring physical health disorders, agoraphobia, suicidality, and self-harm. Thank you for listening to my presentation. That's all for today. Thank you.